I don't want to leave them in.
It says you're on.
Yeah, but yeah, like I'm on YouTube, and I'm gonna record it. Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's about 7:03. This is a hybrid meeting, which means that we're on Zoom as well as in person. The Board of Selectmen is in person, Selectman Hull is present, Selectman Zagrafis is present, and Selectman Pacheco is present. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. As promised, I've mentioned and the board has mentioned that we're going to have a public meeting on all the different articles for our special town meeting, which is November 1st. Our town administrator has come up with a PowerPoint presentation, which we're all going to go through in each article. So be a little patient with us. Anybody and everybody's going to have an opportunity to ask any questions about the different articles, as well as those who have requested those articles can also speak on it as to why they're seeking whatever they're seeking. So at the moment, I'm going to turn it over to our town administrator, Mike Muller. Thank you. And it's a great presentation, by the way. I reviewed it earlier, obviously, and it came out very well. Looks like a lot of work went into it.
So I appreciate it. I was thinking, I just really wanted to start by giving a financial overview on all the funding articles and the recommendations really that went into the funding articles. Yeah, I can also quote a strong priority written on all the funding articles before you kind of on maintaining our fiscal discipline. We're estimating for fiscal year 22 based on the raise and appropriate recommendations before you, before the residents at special town meeting next week, that we will have like an excess an excess tax capacity for fiscal year 2022 at approximately $800,000. And we're proposing to use our $1.7 million in free cash to pay down our debt service for the police station. We're making increases to the stabilization and to the capital stabilization balances. And we're also proposing to fund a number of investments. And hopefully beginning of next month. We'll be working with the State Department of Revenue and the State Division of Local Service and the State Division of Local Services to conduct a financial management whole process where we look at forecasting and other best practices. Excuse me, like you can see from the graphs, if you look at the graph on the left, that takes a look at our free cash, over the last 5 fiscal years, that we've hovered at having a free cash balance of about $1.8 million each year, and that's where we are right now. Also on our excess capacity, we've hovered at having excess capacity, right around $800,000, with actually 2021, fiscal year 2021 being an outlier. And you can see, actually, in 2022, there's nothing there yet because we haven't submitted our tax recap. However, as I mentioned, we plan on that being right around $800,000. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up about where we have and where we're going and how this impacts where we're going to be.
Does anybody have any questions about that fiscal situation in town? If not, we'll go to Article 1, to hear reports from town officials. Anybody wishes to speak on that? If not, we'll go to Article 2. Article 2 is the payment of fiscal year.
1 second, Mr. Chairman.
Sure,
Oh, there we go. Okay.
yes. Payment of fiscal year 2021 ACO unpaid bill. There's a funds payment of $80.83 bill to Mass Rhode Island Veterinary ER for services rendered on March 9, 2021. The Finance Committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen, recommend that we raise and appropriate the funds for this $80.83. Any questions or any comments about that? If not, we'll go to Article 3, which is the payment of the police station debt service using free cash. Proposes to fund $379,675 using part of the town's $1.722 million as certified free cash to pay new police station debt services to reduce the fiscal year 2022 tax rate. Finance Committee recommends to transfer it from free cash as well as the Board of Selectmen. And we have done this, at least since I've been on the board. And I'm not sure you had the bill by the time when you first started on the board, but we've done this every year. Instead of asking taxpayers to pay for this, we pay it out of our free cash. And this year's payment is $379,000 plus some change. Is there any questions about that? Mr. Higgins, could you identify yourself and give us your address? We're going to ask that people go to the microphone if you don't mind, so it can be recorded. What's that, please?
For the audio.
Yeah.
Just a question. So over the course of the bond, how much is this saving us by having prepaid, or are we actually prepaying or are we just using free cash?
We're not prepaying, no, we're not prepaying. This is a payment that's due, and instead of taking it out of our taxes necessarily, I get it, free cash is our taxes, but we're going to use this free cash to pay for this, make this payment.
May I make another comment?
Yes.
And because of our good bond rating and a financial statement that both the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, and other stakeholders signed a couple years ago, we actually saved an entire payment. So I don't think that's something that we talk about a lot, but so all of our affairs are in order, and we're doing this basically to avoid taxes from going up.
Any other questions about that? If not, I'll go to Article 4. Article 4, funding of fiscal year 2022 Police Department personnel expenses. Fund recently, so the Board of Selectmen has recently agreed, as well as the union for the police department, had ratified a contract, and this is to pay for that contract. Funds recently settled collective bargaining agreement between the town of Tighton and Tighton Police Officers, Local 306, Massachusetts Coalition of Police, Local 306. Agreement calls for base wage increases of 2 to 2.5% over the next 3 fiscal years, started in July 1st of 2021. 3-year restructuring of court officer position into community outreach officer position, which includes focus on town traffic needs and utilization of assessment centers as a best practice for promotion. Finance Committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen, recommends to raise and appropriate these funds, and it's, I believe it's $34,543.82. Is there any questions about that? If not, I'm going to go to Article 5, resident petition proposed bylaw. The article is to see if the town will vote to amend the general bylaws to add the following new article: flag bylaw. No person shall fly or display a commemorative or organizational flag other than A, the United States flag, B, the Massachusetts state flag, C, the official town of Tighton flag, D, the official flags of all branches of the U.S. military and armed forces, and or E, the POW/MIA flag on a town flagpole or any other such manner located at the town hall or town-owned land or town-maintained facilities. This is to amend the general bylaws, and this was submitted via a residential petition. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on that? Mr. Higgins.
I'm not sure if the proposed that are here, so it's kind of hard for me to ask a question, but I was actually very confused by this because it seemed very broad and rather vague. I understand from public discussion what the intention was, but one, it seems to be directed at people, so it says any person. And just to get some clarification, I actually did talk to my own attorney, to get a better understanding. So one, it does not appear to place any restriction on the town, because the town is not a person, the town is an incorporated, body with a charter. So this is only directed at people in town. So residents, people coming into town, workers, contractors, that sort of thing. It mentions town-owned property, town-maintained property. That's also rather vague. It could be town halls, cemeteries, parks, recreation, town roads. And because it says, or any such manner, that also means t-shirts, hats, bumper stickers, anything. I've actually been in touch with the Attorney General's office as well to get their understanding of this. And it almost would appear that I can't drive down the road with a bumper sticker with a flag other than one of the approved ones. I don't think that's what people intended when they put this together, but whatever they intended, this is what they wrote and submitted, so that's my concern, and make sure that I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah, I don't know the full interpretation of this. Was not something that the town came up with. This is a citizen petition that came up with this. So you have, the board doesn't know it, but you've submitted a letter to me regarding this, and this will be read at the our meeting this Wednesday on the correspondence meeting on the 27th. So,
Mr. Chairman, may I make a general comment? And I'm not, certainly I'm not an attorney, so I can't address your concerns, but I wanted to make a general comment. When our town council reviewed the articles, they didn't make any judgments about whether we should recommend something, change the language here or there. That wasn't their job, especially on a petitioned article. So I just wanted to make that statement that it was just a non-biased review. And anything that does pass, certainly, as I'm sure you know, will go to the Attorney General for review before it goes into effect. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this?
Brett, would you like to outline how the general counsel interpreted people, the statement of?
They didn't interpret it. That wasn't, this particular article, we should allow the town administrator, if he wishes to speak to that process on this article.
So yeah, on Article 5, the only involvement of town council was really to understand and check that the resident petition actually had the required signatures. That's all they do on a resident article.
Yeah, so they had to have 100 certified signatures from registered voters, and they did that plus some. So that's all our town council was. But if this does pass at next week's meeting, it will then go to the Attorney General, like all the bylaws and everything else that's happened in the past, and the Attorney General's office will decide whether or not that this is an appropriate article, bylaw, and will be taken from there. We'll find out once that happens. So is there anybody else wishes to speak on this bylaw? Now I'm going to go to Article 6. Article 6, proposed health agent increase in hours and wages. Proposes increase in health agent hours from 28 to 35 hours per week, and increase in hourly rate from $37.04 to $38.86 an hour. Follow up to the agreement by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Health, and Finance Committee Chairman and Town Administrator to defer from annual town meeting to special town meeting. Current proposals reflect agreements between the Board of Selectmen, Board of Health, and Town Administrator. Tighton's health agent is the only health agent working less than 35 hours when compared to 7 surrounding communities, also lowest paid health agent. Finance Committee will be reviewing this on October 28th, but the Board of Selectmen did recommend to raise, the majority of the Board of Selectmen did recommend to raise and appropriate this. And also presented is the different towns in our area as to how much they get paid, as well as how much their hours, how many hours that they work. Mr. Pires, would you like to speak on this?
Yeah, I'd like to address part of it anyway, simply because it's not very often that a raise and appropriate for salary comes up at a special town meeting, that's normally done. You might have to stand here, I don't have my back to the people.
Yeah, no, this is Tom Pires, if you didn't introduce yourself.
Yeah, Thomas Byers and Chairman of Board of Health. So I'm gonna read this because I would have forgotten otherwise. Months prior to the annual town meeting scheduled for June of 2021, the Board of Health had discussions with the previous town administrator regarding an employee contract or agreement with the health agent that would outline wages, hours, and job duties and responsibilities. At the time, the town administrator had plans on leaving, so unfortunately, a contract or agreement was never reached prior to the annual town meeting. Also, at that time, the rate of $38.86 per hour and 35 hours had been the recommendation from the three-member Board of Health for the health agent for consideration at the annual town meeting. As the town was finalizing articles for the annual town meeting, the former chairman of the Finance Committee recommended and requested that this article be put off until the fall special town meeting so that a contract or employee agreement can be created, which was agreed to by, of course, the Board of Health and the agent, and I believe Mike, the town administrator, was involved with that also, and I think a member of the Board of Selectmen
Yep.
was. So in preparation for the upcoming special town meeting, the following individuals met on 2 occasions to reach agreement on wages and hours of work. Those people were Chairman, Board of Selectmen Ken Pacheco, Chairman of Board of Health Thomas Byers, Town Administrator Michael Mullen, and Health Agent Todd Phillips. It was agreed by all present after the second meeting that at this time the duties and responsibilities will remain unchanged. It was also agreed to accept and put forward a request for a 35-hour work week at a rate of $38.86 hourly on a special town meeting warrant. So that's how that article got here. Normally doesn't address these things at special town meetings, but at the request of the Finance Committee Chairman, we did all agree that would probably be the best avenue to go. So here we are.
Thank you, Mr. Pires. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this? If not, we'll go to Article 7. Article 7, proposed reimbursement to the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Fiscal year 2021 town approved operating budget including $20,115 payment for 12 months of employee health insurance for Sewer Enterprise, from Sewer Enterprise Fund. Sewer employees stopped receiving health insurance benefits through town in December of 2020, but charged by town for the whole amount per former town accountant. Proposed article would provide reimbursement by town to Sewer Enterprise funds for unused balance of health insurance costs. So from the wording of the article, the town took $11,142.81 from the, nope, that's the wrong page, $10,057.50 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund, which we didn't use, we didn't spend on for the health insurance. As a result of that, the Sewer Enterprise and Sewer Commission's looking for reimbursement for those funds, and it's only appropriate since we didn't utilize those funds that we reimburse them for those funds. Is there any questions about that?
I think Mr. Ferry, he's on the Sewer Commission.
Yes, so, Tom Ferry, one of the commissioners. I'm just wondering if this is just housekeeping, it's internal, or does it actually need to go for a vote?
I believe it needs to go for a vote. We wanted more clarification on this, so the board as well as the FinCom hasn't made a recommendation on this. We're going to meet again Thursday, and I suspect that we'll both.
Right.
I can't speak for my colleagues, but I'll be supporting this. And hopefully the FinCom and my colleagues will be supporting this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Article 8, moving right along. Article 8, reappropriation of funds for purchase of town inspectional vehicle. Fall of 2020 special town meeting approved $30,000 for the purchase of a 2020 Ford Escape hybrid vehicle as a town inspectional vehicle. Inventory and chip issues have created an impossible challenge for the town to procure such vehicle, but original article limits town purchase of a vehicle specifically to a 2020 Ford Escape hybrid vehicle. Current article seeks to approve $40,000, unfortunately, inflation, in funding for the purchase of a hybrid vehicle, just a hybrid vehicle, $30,000, which has already been will be reappropriated from the original article. So we've already appropriated $30,000. They're seeking an additional $10,000 because of the different issues with getting vehicles. The warrant article that we approved a year ago was so specific as to the type of vehicle, and we're not able to get that vehicle. We have to change it to just a hybrid vehicle, still be hybrid, still be environmentally sound, but we're also seeking an additional $10,000 on that. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yes.
Jeff Ball, 2124 Tom's Way. I only have a question about the comments that are behind the camera. I can't read them.
Oh, could you,
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
I know it's hard.
Yeah, you have to keep moving it around.
Yeah. Here we go.
You have to do it for everything.
Thank you. That was all. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Does everybody understand that article then, what we're going to be asking? Article 9, purchase and installation of town hall HVAC unit. Article proposes that $13,000 be expended for the purchase and installation of a high-efficiency HVAC unit at town hall. Town replaced 2 original 5-ton units last summer, cooling system in a 3-ton unit serving the front offices of town hall main level failed in midsummer. With funding for and replacement of a 3-ton unit, all HVAC systems will now be new and highly efficient. These HVAC systems, it's my understanding, and Mr. Agek can speak on this, I believe they're about 40 years old from when the building was built in 1979. The ones that we replaced last year were 40 years old. This one's obviously a little older, but it also failed. We had to, for those who have the front offices, Mr. Mullins, one of those, we had to put air conditioning in the windows so that they would have air conditioning for the summer. The heating apparently does work, so I think we had the heat on today when I was in your office. So the heating does work, but we're hoping if this is
I'm
passed.
not biased at all.
Yeah. We're hoping that if this passes, then we'll be able to purchase the new system, and by next spring or when it starts to get warm, we have air conditioning for our town employees. So is there any questions on that article? If not, we'll go to Article 10. I hope next Monday is as quick as this is going.
Yeah. Don't let me ask questions.
Yeah.
We just vote on these tonight, or?
Yeah. I did suggest to my colleagues that we not ask too many questions, so that's why it's a little quicker tonight. So, not pointing at anybody, but anyway. Article 10, enhanced town cybersecurity insurance policy. It builds on our town's efforts to strengthen and maintain IT network and security efforts. Town of Tighton last week designated as cyber-aware community by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we'll speak on that on, Mr. Socrates will speak on that Wednesday night. Funding will implement multi-factor authentication for employee access into town network, ensures adequate insurance coverage for any breach, federal, state reporting requirements. The Finance Committee recommends, as well as the Board of Selectmen, that we transfer this money from free cash, and this is in the amount of $15,000 that we're seeking. Is there any questions on that?
Well, I could think, Mr. Chairman, I believe I might have a typo there. That should be raised and approved. Yeah, sorry. The FinCom and the Board of Selectmen actually recommend 10,000 of the 15,000 be from raise and appropriate, and that 5,000 for the multi-factor authentication be transferred from free cash. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Any questions on that? If not, we'll go to Article 11, Tighton Trails Feasibility Study. Trails Committee is seeking up to $40,000 in funding for a feasibility study to define concepts and design for on-road and off-road trail options to tie in the future 2-mile DCR Sweet Knolls Rail Trail into the fabric of Dighton and surrounding communities. DCR Sweet Knoll Rail Trail being constructed in the heart of Dighton, spanning roughly 1 mile north and south of the existing DCR Sweet Knolls State Park located on Route 138. DCR actively starting on design phases of this project with a site visit and meeting with the Trail Committee's members and town officials on Thursday, October 21st. Scope of feasibility study is to focus on north and south terminations of the DCR Sweet Knoll Rail Trail to tie into town and Somerset, connecting Dighton to surrounding communities and the Dighton River Trails Network Regional Vision for 22-plus mile multi-model recreational trail, a vision decades in the making. If funding is secured, the study will produce concepts and rough designs that can be used to pursue grants to turn these designs into reality in the coming years. And I've asked, did we not vote on this then, I guess? No.
We were gonna vote with Finance Committee.
We're going
On
to vote on this Thursday. when we-
Yes.
But we do have somebody from the
Trails.
Trails Committee, and if he wishes to speak on this,
Yes, please.
Jeff Cavallo.
Yeah, can I move this?
Whatever you want.
Whatever. Go back this way. Are you gonna bring up the other one, Mike?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Well, can you hear me okay? I might check. Okay, so you said pretty much everything in those two slides, because Mike took what I sent them and he condensed it into those two slides. But I just had a little bit more eye candy here, just to talk to it, if you don't mind. It's
Sure.
3 slides long, so it's very, very short. And hopefully I can answer any additional questions you might have or concerns, or anybody else too, please. So Jeff Cavallo, chairman of the Tighton Trails Committee, 2124 Thomas Way. And I'm also joined by 2 additional Trails Committee members. Got Rachel Conti in the back. Good, Rachel. And Karen Alves. Can I? So they're here tonight. Thank you for coming. Brief outline. I'm just going to talk about the feasibility study background. You've already heard we're asking for an amount not to exceed $40,000. Sounds like a lot of money, but there's a very good reason for that. I want to talk about the Sweet Snow Rail Trail plans. That's a reality. We just met this past week. Was it this week? It was last week.
Yeah, last Thursday.
Last Thursday. Wow, weekends are blending together. So we met last week with DCR. They came to town for the site visit. It was a fantastic walkthrough. And then the next steps, if funded. So there's a plan beyond. So next one, please. Go again. There it is. So you've already heard this. The chairman of the Board of Selectmen already talked about this. We're looking for money for a feasibility study. Why are we doing it? I'll talk about that in a second. But there's a trail coming to town from the Department of Conservation and Recreation going on state property. So along the east side of Tighton, there's railroad right of way. They want to put a rail trail on it, a lot like what you see in Bristol bike path. Go again, please. I'll make these less complicated next time, I promise. There we go. So the scope, you've heard this already. We're not doing anything directly on the rail trail. That's 100% funded with design engineering. The design and engineering funding is already secured. The state's got their money. Matter of fact, we were here last week going through and doing a walkthrough with their prospective designing firms to who then are going to put a quote together to start that engineering work, design and engineering work. And from what I understand from Serpent, they've also got the money set aside to actually build this. So none of that's going to come out of Tighton's pocket. So that's wonderful news. We're going to get a 2-mile rail trail in the town of Tighton that we get to enjoy. But what do we do next? That's what we're focused on. How do we tie this into Tighton in the south where it ends and to Tighton in the north where it ends? We're part of the Tighton River Pathways community. What that means is Serpent has a vision for this 22-mile multimodal rail trail. Multimodal, meaning it's on-road, off-road, bike path, gravel, canoe, waterway. So multimodal really means that, multiple different ways of having transportation between locations. So Tighton is a part of that big jigsaw puzzle. So what we want to do is we want to take advantage of DCR coming in, spending quite a bit of money putting this trail in our town, and we want to tie it into Somerset so we can connect that up. That's the scope. So we're focused on the connections. And so it's a little hard to see from this distance, but if you look at it on the right there, you know where Sweet Snow Park is on 138. If you look roughly a mile north and roughly a mile south, that's what they're going to put in. So on the south end, if you're at Alice's last stop, you go out the back of the building and you're on Somerset Ave. Yeah, Somerset Ave behind the building, you'll see there's actually like a parking area. That's the bottom end of the trail. That's the termination right now in the south. If you get on 138 and drive north, hanging right on Sandpiper Lane, that's the north end of that termination right now. The town of Tighton actually owns a wedge and owned that cul-de-sac. So the thought right now is, it's completely open-ended, trying to figure out how best to terminate on the north end. And what we want to do is we want to say, okay, what makes the most sense from that termination, which is really in the woods, on the end of a cul-de-sac, to across the 3 Mile River. There's a lot of different options going north. And so what we want to do is instead of having a bunch of us volunteers figure out how best to do this and lay it out on some paper with pencils and crayons, we want an engineering firm to come in and say, okay, let's do some due diligence and look at what types of trails make sense for this part of the country, this part of Massachusetts, looking at what is the most efficient and the most efficient of use and most cost effective to get better designs. So these are the guys right now that are working on the DCR portion of it, and we have a pretty good relationship with them, and so we try to keep in touch and get updates as we move along. But ultimately, the goal is once they're done making this, we want to be ready on our end, and that's where the feasibility study comes in. Yes, sir. Next one's the last one. Let's go ahead and hit next a couple times. So what's the point of a feasibility study? What does it do? It really opens up an opportunity to be very competitive for the next steps. And the next steps after a feasibility study is, you spend this money, you get this feasibility study, you get designs and concepts for what you can do for tying the north and south, but you go after grant money. And so in order to go for grant money, you can do one of two things. You can go completely cold with just some rough ideas of what you and a few people have come up with, or you can go with supporting information with, okay, we've done this study, these are the individual elements. You can break up a big project into smaller elements. You can take those elements and you can go after grants for each one of those little pieces. And you've got your homework you've done with from the study that you can use as part of your proposal. So the point of this is that you're armed with better information. Candidate grants, if this does get funded, so I've got a big list there. That's right from the Massachusetts grants page. These are just state level grants. There's also federal grants that we learned of some of these through Serpent. We talk a lot with them about what we can do moving forward. So all this information is out there, and I have this, if anybody here is on Facebook, I also have this posted on Facebook if you're interested to go take a look. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions.
Selectman Hull, you have a question?
Mr. Cloutman, regarding the feasibility study.
Yep.
How far south does it go? More specifically, how close to the piece of property that's being negotiated with Somerset does that study, with a resident from Somerset, that's being?
You're specifically concerned with Mr. Mello on Hart Street.
Yes.
We don't want to say his name, but I want to be specific.
Okay.
So we are not doing anything with Mr. Mello. We're leaving that alone. But you're asking how far are we going? We're going to the Somerset line.
Okay.
All right. So and talking to Serpent, the least path of resistance going south is just leaving Alice's last stop and going straight on road to the town of Somerset, and that's fine. If the feasibility study says yes, we've looked at it, and this is the least path of resistance, and these are the treatments you can do on your road with markings, or you can get onto Hart Street. Unfortunately, you can't go all the way through Hart Street because there's a concern there by one of the residents. Completely understand, but the intent isn't to use this to go after that. The intent is to focus on what the options are, and then we can make educated all of them. And I'd like to put it on the table. I'd like to say what can we do moving forward, and if things are insurmountable, we have to table it for now.
But my concern was, if that becomes an obstacle, would you have alternative plans? And the answer is yes.
The alternative plan is to stay on road.
Okay.
We'd have no other option.
May I ask a question based off that?
Sure, just my wife's calling.
No,
I'm declining the phone
Don't you
call.
dare ignore that call.
Oh, no.
Hopefully she'll text me.
If,
She's watching you right now, you might not answer.
will the feasibility study, to Selectman Hull's point, give you an idea of what may be the best path?
If you
or
could
what-
excuse me, could you
what-
take over the meeting? I'm just.
What may be
So the next-
possible, given like whatever the circumstances are along that trail where we're gonna meet up along the Somerset line.
That would be one of the goals of that,
So,
that area.
so I guess my question is, it shouldn't be studying just one thing. It should be looking at a bunch of things and then telling us,
That's for cable.
giving us an idea of like costs and what may be the best route, I guess I'll use, to link up to that already existing rail trail.
Right, so you got, exactly, so you got the 2 miles, and I want to say, okay, but initially when we went to the other funding option, we were just focused on the south. We said, okay, I'm ending behind Alice's, and I want to get the Somerset line, and I want somebody to come in and say, look at all the land options, look at all the road options, look at ownership, look at designs, and give me a list of a list of options we have, and then tell me which ones you think are the best and why, and what do they cost.
Okay.
That's what I want out of this feasibility study. That's, once we sit down and we go out for, I'm assuming we're gonna go out for bid or something, but to put the language down, specifically what we're looking for
Like a
in a
scope.
bulleted list. But we're kind of working towards saying, these are the things we want to take away from them. We don't want you to just come back and give me the design for a bridge. Like, I didn't ask you for a bridge, I asked you for, best passage from point A to point B.
And my last question, I promise, my last question would be, and I don't want to get too far, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, because we want to focus on the feasibility part, but I'm also thinking about the grants as well.
Yep.
And I may be mistaken. So let's say we have a route that looks promising, we have a cost, it seems affordable, but we still want to get a grant to fund it. Is the grant funding the actual work that would need to be done to make the trail link up, I don't know,
Construction.
rider friendly?
Construction versus design, you mean? Or-
Sure,
So
exactly.
there's 2 stages. There's the design and engineering, and then there's the actual construction. A lot of these are for construction, but as far as I understand from talking to Bill over at Serpent, there are things we can do to help fund the D&E, the design and engineering, because that's, step one. Once you go through and you come up with all these concepts, it's like going to an architect. An architect, which is a lot like what you would almost get, you get more detail out of a feasibility study depending on how you scope it. But feasibility study is like going to an architect to design your house. You might want somebody to go along and give you all these concepts, and they're all great, but then you need somebody to then take that and make it reality and then give you an actual cost. That's the D&E part of it. So those would have to be funded separately.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions for the chairman? Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I think that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $225,000 to be expended by the police and fire department in the build out of 2-site public safety rated repeater systems, new portable radios, and any necessary equipment relative thereto, or take any action relative thereto. The specifics of police and fire department repeater and radio upgrades build out. Current public safety radio system is not a public safety rated system. Survey reveals bad grounding and moderate signal loss in the current radio network. Communication is getting worse over time as the 18-year-old system continues to age. There are a number of areas in town where police and fire cannot communicate with a dispatcher or between each other. Many of the current portable radios have been phased out by the manufacturer, making it more difficult to secure parts. New system will prepare the Tighton Fire Department, Tighton Police Department dispatch to move to digital technology in the future when, if needed, completely P25 capable. Upgraded systems will need no interjection in certain areas of town to get appropriate communication coverage. Committee has no recommendation, as well as the Board of Selectmen's Committee. Our town administrator is recommending that we defer this at the special town meeting, but to immediately fund this with our ARPA funds, the American Rescue funds. We have some of those funds, and we're going to be spending this money from the ARPA funds that we already have, and then go for grants, as my understanding. We're going to go for grants to actually fund this. But in the meantime, we're going to actually purchase this. If the fire chief or the police chief or someone from the police department wishes to speak on this, but it looks like, and I suspect I'll also be recommending that it be deferred so that we can spend our ARPA funds, so we can do this immediately, not have it come out of our free cash, and that we seek grants for that. Is there anyone wish to speak on that?
Are you looking to defer it or no motion on it?
The recommendation was to defer it, but I'm not sure.
I thought we had discussed the motion.
So, I apologize, I'm not taking any action. So, yes. Yep.
Selectman Hull?
Today, we received communication at Town Hall from Representative Pat Haddad's office. And there was very strong support from her office that $200,000 will be appropriated soon to the town of Dighton. And I would strongly recommend that we defer at special town meeting and allow the ARPA funds to be used for that. One of the things that I did mention at the last selectmen's meeting, and it is a goal of mine to save as much money as possible from free cash to meet those goals of 5% towards regular stabilization and a 10% goal at this time for capital stabilization. We have a lot of projects coming down the road, including DPW, fire, and possibly a library that are going to take a great deal of funding. And it wouldn't hurt to build up those accounts so that the burden on the taxpayer down the road isn't significant. Thank you.
So I guess the plan is to have no motion then on this article, rather than defer. Speaking of those,
Just Terry, just a question.
oh, yes, Mr. Perry. I didn't see your hand, I'm sorry.
I just raised it. Bob Perry, 1331 Stanzione Drive. First of all, I would agree with deferring this article. Clearly, communications is the key to any successful operation. I would suggest that in addition to the efforts by Representative Haddad, I think somehow this could be spun into ballpark of Homeland Security or FEMA or MEMA, because here we are protecting our people. We're communicating with other agencies in other municipalities. And I think that falls into the ballpark of, as I said, Homeland or FEMA or MEMA. And what the heck, the worst they can say is, sorry, it doesn't qualify. But I mean, let's get as much money as we can flowing in and put ourselves in a position where we can say, sorry, we don't need that. Thank you.
So it's my understanding the plan is to use ARPA funds to purchase it now, but also to go for these grants, which means that we'll get the ARPA funds back, and then we can spend on something else that's needed in the town. But we don't want to wait to just apply for grants for this. We want to do it as soon as possible. And since we have these funds already, we're asking that we go forward with it.
And most state grants are, I shouldn't say most, a lot of state grants are reimbursement grants. So you spend the money upfront and then that's in line with our plan.
Sure.
As currently stated.
Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds a sum of money not to exceed $150,000 for engineering and design services for the Pleasant Street Bridge reconstruction project, or take any other action relative thereto. The Pleasant Street Bridge is 107 years old at Muddy Cove, is listed as a vulnerable area of concern in terms of coastal flooding in the town's combined municipal vulnerability plan and hazard mitigation plan, as well as the municipal vulnerability preparedness plan regional addendum for Somerset, Dayton, Swansea. Bridge has a weight posting for less than half the legal statutory vehicle load, which presents a hurdle in public safety access across Pleasant Street. Average traffic volume along Pleasant Street recorded at 1,345 vehicles a day. That's a lot of vehicles. Town has been seeking state assistance to fund Pleasant Street Bridge reconstruction costs. Engineering is needed to make project truly shovel-ready. Engineering includes topographic and existing condition survey, hydraulic evaluation, geotechnical analysis, design, construction plans and details, and state chapter 85 review, among other tasks. The Finance Committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen, recommend we transfer these funds from free cash. Mr. Ferry, do you want to speak on this? I probably read everything that you wanted to tell us already, but I'm sorry, I should have probably deferred to you on this, but I know this is something you brought to the board's attention.
Yes, it's, you said quite a bit that needs to be said, including getting ready for it. So it's an attractive grant opportunity also. It always seems to be a way that we're missing it, but this is one of the easy ways of doing it. This is the worst bridge in our town, condition-wise, and also what's spared it actually is we don't have the legal way or structural way to stop vehicles from ending up in the river either. And that's part of the bridge project. So right now you see a Jersey barrier there, and it's going to remain there until we can reconstruct the bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Ferry. Does anybody have any questions about that? Mr. Pires?
Thomas Myers, just curious on the bridge, it serves both communities. Is Somerset going to have any responsibility or liability in repair of this thing?
Good question.
That bridge was already replaced. This is the bridge over Winnie Cove.
Okay.
Other way down on the other side of Pleasant.
Okay. Oh, by Muddy Cove Lane.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody? If not, we'll go to Article 14. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds an amount not to exceed $30,000 for planning and permitting costs to redesign the driveway and traffic patterns and add a maintenance facility at Tighton Elementary School / Tighton Middle School, or take any action relative thereto. Tighton Elementary School and Tighton Middle School driveway redesign and maintenance facility, additional $30,000 for design, permitting, and engineering. Last November, special town meeting approved $85,000 to fund the redesign and engineering of an approved DES-DMS roadway redesign with public safety access. December 4, 2020, site visit scheduled with town and DR officials, school community stakeholders, school department feedback, prioritize the preservation of green space, construction of a school maintenance facility and project. August 11, 2021, update to the Board of Selectmen, school district, and committee members invited. Proposed design was presented with a number of wetlands and vernal pools permitting issues discussed. Prompted to the need for an additional $30,000 to complete engineering, permitting, and design process. Wetland and vernal pool issues necessitate local, state, MEPA, and environmental important reports, and federal Army Corps of Engineers permitting process. So this, we've already, and I guess there's a picture of it. Town plans to pursue grant funding for the project to help offset construction costs, but we need engineering and permitting to be completed and be shovel-ready in order to apply. Finance Committee recommends transfer from free cash as well as the Board of Selectmen. So we've already funded, we meaning the residents, already funded $85,000, but because of the topography, the wetlands that were there, it's going to cost us additional monies. And so we're seeking additional monies to fund this project. This project is being done at the request of residents in town who were concerned about the safety of their children going to the school. If you've ever seen the mess when parents are dropping their kids off, and parents are picking up the kids, it's horrendous. The traffic sometimes goes out to Route 138 and it causes problems at the light at 138. So the backup is so big. So we're seeking an additional $30,000. Is there any questions regarding this article? If not, we'll go to Article 15. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to authorize a total expenditure of $50,000 to be raised and appropriated and transferred from available funds for fiscal year 22 expenses as follows: raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds. Board of Health is seeking $5,000 for a public health nurse. Expenses, accounting, $5,000. Budget reconciliation, $1,000. Reserve fund, $10,000. Public buildings, $15,000. Ambulance billing and software fees, $7,000, and additional insurance costs of $7,000. Total raise and appropriate annual transfer from available funds, $50,000. The Finance Committee recommends to raise and appropriate. Is there a recommendation? The Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen recommend to raise and appropriate annual transfer from available funds in the amount of $50,000. Is there any questions about Article 15?
Sorry, what was the recommendation on that? Raise and appropriate or transfer?
Yes, the Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen recommend to raise and appropriate an annual transfer from available funds. So we're not specific as to what we're doing.
Everything on Article 15, will be in the motion, so what is being taken from where? For example, the fifth, the ambulance billing software footings into this moderator will be taken from the ambulance fund. The insurance will be raised and appropriate, all that information will be outlined in the motion.
So you're gonna break out the motion
Yes.
line by line?
Yes.
Any other questions? If not, we'll go to Article 16. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate annual transfer from available funds the sum of $12,000 to be expended by the Board of Health to fund a hazardous waste disposal day in the town or take any action relative thereto. Funding in the Board of Health budget was cut during the fiscal year 2022 budget process with an understanding that the funding be proposed at fall special town meeting. The last household hazardous waste day in Tighton was held more than 1 year ago at a cost of $10,400. Finance Committee to discuss on October 28th. The Board of Selectmen recommends to raise and appropriate these funds. Any questions about this? If not, we'll go to Article 17. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds a sum not to exceed $200,000 to the capital stabilization account or take any action relative thereto. Finance Committee recommends transfer from free cash as well as the Board of Selectmen. Currently, right now, the capital stabilization fund has a balance of $738,018.53 after a $100,000 withdrawal at annual town meeting. Balance will increase it to $938,018.53. Capital stabilization account is an important funding source as the capital outlay committee begins to compile a long-term town-wide capital plan. As noted from Selectman Hull earlier, this is a fund that we create to fund future projects for the town. It's important that whenever we get a chance to use free cash to put into this fund, that we do it. And this year, we're recommending the amount of $200,000. We've been pretty generous with this in the past years. I suspect next year we may be increasing this amount if our opinion means anything to the residents. But it's very important so that when we have projects in the future, and we have a lot of projects coming down the pike, that we be able to use some of this funds to lower the tax, so we don't have to ask so much money from the residents in town. Is there any questions about this article?
Point of clarity, this will require a 2/3 vote. I mean,
Thank you. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds not to exceed $200,000 to the stabilization account or take any action relative thereto. The balance of this fund, stabilization account, is $1.45 million. This happens, it'll increase it to $1.65 million. Recommended best practice is to build stabilization account balance to 10% of operating budget. Finance Committee recommends $150,000 be transferred from free cash, but the Board of Selectmen recommends $200,000 transfer from free cash. Any questions regarding that article?
this will also require a 2/3 vote.
Thank you. The next article, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate annual transfer from PEG access funds, a sum of money not to exceed $14,000 to be expended by the building commissioner to purchase 2 mini-split HVAC pump systems for the lower level cable television office and town hall, or take any other action relative thereto. Article proposed that $14,000 be expended from the PEG funds, will be funded with PEG funds and having no tax impact on free cash. Part of the building upgrade project to modernize the cable office in a temperature controlled setting for equipment. We have a lot of equipment downstairs that, which is very expensive, and we need to make sure that the humidity and temperature and all that good stuff is maintained. Finance Committee recommends transfer from PEG Access Fund, as well as the Board of Selectmen recommends that. Is there any questions, any comments on this? Mr. Perry?
Quick question, does 14,000 also include installation?
Yes.
Mr. Marvel,
See
yes?
that in here, that's why I asked.
I think so.
Mr. Aguirre?
The answer is yes.
I assumed that, but I didn't see it.
Any other questions about that? If not, we're going to go to Article 20. Article 20, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the total sum of $64,500 to be expended by the highway superintendent to purchase one mid-mounted boom mower or take any action relative thereto. Finance Committee recommends transfer from free cash as well as the Board of Selectmen. Residents of this town at this year's annual town meeting approved $64,000 for a new highway department utility tractor. The highway department had requested this as well as the utility tractor. We decided just to go with the utility tractor at that time because we had to cut down $500,000 from our budget. Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen recommend deferring purchase of, this is back in the annual town meeting on June 7th, I think it was. Recommend deferring purchase of the boom mower to special town meeting. Purchase will equip new utility tractor with a new boom mower. And it's my understanding, Mr. Ferry, that we have one now, but it gets easily damaged. These are the mowers that go along the side of the road to cut the brush and all that kind of good stuff. And as everybody knows, people throw different stuff there, and sometimes it damages this. So we want to make sure that we have equipment for this if something should happen to the other one, and quite frankly, if it can't be repaired. Any comment you want to make on that, Mr. Ferry, on this article?
Just that you did a nice job presenting it, and also the town administrator with the picture up there, it's very close to what we're looking at. It's a little different than what we use it now. This is a mid-mount right between the front rear tire, so we can see a little bit better while we're mowing. The present one is facing a very major expense repair. We've been welding it and whatnot, but the actual power head's ready to go. That's the hockey of the unit. So we will be replacing it, not adding this to the inventory. We're gonna get rid of the old one.
Okay. Any questions? If not, we'll go to Article 21. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the total sum of $64,500 to be expended. No, let me start again. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $150,000 to the OPED, other post-employment benefits liability trust fund established to cover the unfunded actual liability for retirees' health care and life insurance benefits, or take any action relative thereto. So we, the town's independent auditors, Rosalie Clark and Associates, recommend that the town of Tighton fund its OPED trust at an amount of $125,000 each year to fund our unfunded liability for retiree health care and life insurance benefits. The proposed funding in Article 21 seeks to continue the town's commitment of fulfilling the obligation which continues to strengthen the town's financial position. Of the $125,000 in recommended funding by the Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen, $90,000 will be funded with a transfer from free cash, with the remaining $35,000 raised and appropriated in the town's operational budget. So this is something we do every year at the special town meeting. We see how much free cash we have. This is a fully funded liability for the town, so we try to put as much money as we can. We're one of the better towns in the area as far as funding this, and I would like personally to continue doing this for the town so that we're in better shape somewhere down the road. Is there any questions regarding this? Selectman Hull.
One point, your presentation, 150,000.
The proposal is 100, and the recommendation was 150,000. The Board of Selectmen, as well as the Finance Committee, we reduced it to $125,000. That was the recommendation of our independent auditors. So we made it to 125,000, but in the past, we've given maybe higher amounts than what we're giving this year. Any questions about that article?
So the plan is to make a motion for 125 now.
Yes. Article 22, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds the sum of $6,000 to be used for public utilities appraisals, New England Power Company, Massachusetts Electric Company, and Eversource Gas Company, as required by the Department of Revenue for the fiscal year 2022, or take action thereto. Funding for this article continues to fulfill the Department of Revenue, DOR's requirements that public utilities, Eversource Gas Company, Massachusetts Electric Company, and New England Power to be appraised every year by the town. Finance Committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen, recommend this be transferred from free cash. Any questions on Article 22? If not, we're going to go to Article 23. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds the sum of $8,000 to be used for assistance for the fiscal year 2023 certification reevaluation of real estate and commercial property of the town, or take any action relative thereto. $8,000 for certification assistance for the fiscal year reevaluation for real estate and commercial property. This article funds annual outside consultant services to assist in the reevaluation for Tighton's real estate and commercial property in fiscal year 2023. Finance Committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen, recommend that we transfer this from free cash. Any questions? Moving right along. Article 24. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds the sum of $64,000 to be expended by the police chief for the purchase of one fully equipped police vehicle, including computer, firearm, patrol rifles, radio, antenna, and any accessories relative thereto, or take any action relative thereto. $64,000 for a fully equipped police vehicle. Funding proposed in Article 24 continues the town's longstanding practice of appropriating funds for the purchase of a new fully equipped police vehicle each year. The fully equipped police vehicle includes computer, firearm, patrol rifle, radio, antenna, and related accessories. Finance Committee recommends transfer from free cash, as well as the Board of Selectmen. Each year we've been funding a new, as everybody knows, the police cruisers, they put a lot of mileage on, some of them 150, 200,000 miles on it, and every year we've been able to, fortunately, purchase a new vehicle for the police department. Selectman Hull.
Yes, I have a question for Chief McDonald. Each year we fund a new police cruiser. What happens to the computer that goes offline when we put that, I should say, when we put that cruiser offline? What happens to the patrol rifle that was in that old cruiser that goes offline? And that radio and that antenna? Does it go with the cruiser, the scrap bin, or why couldn't this be transferred into the new cruiser? Or some,
Now I'll explain to you about how many cars we have and the mileage and average mileage we have in these cars, so you are familiar with it, okay?
well, I understand the car, I'm just saying the stuff that you're requesting, new computer, new firearm, new radio, new antenna to go with it. Why isn't it transferred from the old car into the new car?
Lieutenant Cronin.
I'll comment on that, because when you say why isn't transferred on the old car, it's because we're still using the old car,
Okay,
and we're still using it. So when we get a new vehicle, we have to update that, we have to get that equipment for that car. We can't take a computer out of another car and throw it into another cruiser, a newer car. So the computers that we have are in those cars, and we're still using them. So, go ahead.
thank you.
Lieutenant Cronin.
So you're not discontinuing a car, you're adding a car.
Yes. So
Might be cutting back on the usage because it's old, but,
Right.
okay.
So right now, we have 8 marked cars, okay? And an average of 3 of them right now, it's about 155,000. And those are on patrol. So these guys are answering calls, emergency calls, in a vehicle that has 155,000 miles. I don't know if a lot of people in here drive a car that has 150,000 miles. I think they would buy a new one or whatever, how they do their thing with their cars. The other 3 average about 75,000. Those are still on patrol, being used. Cars go 24/7. Sometimes they don't even sit. Maybe once in a while, we might sit a car, because in our department, each officer has their own assigned car. And that's not just one officer, that could be 3 officers in 572. I'm just using the car number. 2 officers could use 573. So now you're looking at that these cars are going all the time, they don't stop. So, like you said, as far as the computers, yeah, these cars, computers are still in these cars. We don't take the computer out, put it in a new car that we get one.
No, thank you. I just, I get asked questions by the voters. I'm sure you may get asked by the public at town meeting. That was the question that I was asked, so I said, well, I'll ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I could add is that what the chief's talking about are frontline cars, so we term them as frontline, which are cars that are used daily for patrol. Once they're kind of reassigned, they become traffic cars, detail use, special events, things like that. So it's no longer a frontline, first response car.
Thank you.
I'm glad that we kind of brought that up too, because yes, these cars, some of these cars are details or at night, even sometimes during the day, these companies request a car, and we charge to the companies a fee to use this vehicle, and all this money that we receive goes right to the town. And a lot of times, cars are being used for details now. So that's a thing too, we're using those for details.
Mr. Aguirre?
Further clarification, we're not stacking cars. We have auctioned off 2 police vehicles in last year's auction, 2020. There are 2 more vehicles in this year's auction, in 2021. So the old of the old, which is cars in excess of 200,000 miles, are going for auction, and we are getting funds for those. I was actually surprised how much money we get for them, so.
Thank you.
And I would assume, because I think it's the 2010 and 2011 that that's surplus vehicles that we'll be addressing Wednesday night, that those computers aren't up to date. And I mean, computers change so quickly, I would be surprised if you're able to transfer that to a new
There's nothing
vehicle.
salvageable.
Mr. Perry, I saw your hand up.
I imagine, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in addition to, you might have a car with 150,000 miles, but if that engine's got more than 150,000 miles, like you said, on the highway.
Exactly. Yes.
It's a lot more wear and tear than 150,000 miles indicates.
Thank you for that clarification. Dr. Z?
So my question is, I assume you gentlemen have an idea of what type of vehicle you would want, and I guess my question is, and I'll get to it, I promise. So we had the issue with the Ford Hybrid Escape, the inspectional vehicle, which we couldn't, basically there was a delay in manufacturing, so we couldn't get one, and that's why we had to write the new article. Are you expecting any issues with actually getting the vehicle or having it made due to like unforeseen like manufacturing issues or anything?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the Richards takes care of all the cars, borrowing a car with Tighton, and he's been looking into different manufacturers to see what we can get that would be quicker than waiting 6 months to a year. So he looks into that all the time, so yeah, we are looking into that.
Thank you.
And this article isn't specific to any type of vehicle, which is good, because then you'll be limited to that vehicle.
Correct.
Any other questions regarding that article? Article 25, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds a sum not to exceed $3,000 to be expended by the town clerk to purchase dog license software or take any action relative thereto. We happen to have our town clerk here tonight. Mark Pacheco, would you like to address this?
Yeah, thank you. Simply put, it takes us from paper and pen dog licensing to being able to issue a dog license on the computer. It'll save time at the counter, also help with sending out letters and reminder notices, so it will cut down a lot of time at the office.
Any questions? Just want to remind the public that if you're $70 or older, you don't have to pay for the dog license. So just one of the few advantages of getting old.
I thought you were going to do the no relationship disclaimer.
If there's no other questions on that, Article 26. See if the town will vote to raise inappropriate and or transfer from available funds not to exceed $27,350 to be expended by the police department to purchase 22 body-worn cameras and all necessary equipment related to implementation of a body-worn camera policy or take any action relative thereto. Proposed funding to purchase the body-worn cameras for police department body-worn cameras anticipated to be an implementation requirement of the new police reform law. Also seeks to provide greater security for our police personnel and to provide overall transparency for the review of practices and training. Commonwealth of Massachusetts makes significant grant funding available for body-worn cameras. Tighton applied for funding in late August, awaiting grant decision. So obviously, if we vote for this and we fund this, we still got the pending grant out there, so hopefully we'll get the grant to pay for this. I personally think it's great for the police department to have these. I think it really protects the police officers so that when they're being accused of something or whatever, they can actually have a video of what's actually transpired. So I think it's very important that happened. Any questions regarding this article? If not, excuse me?
What's the funding source, sorry?
The Finance Committee had no recommendation. They may be addressing again Thursday. Town Administrator recommends to defer pending state grant decision. I didn't see that. So.
No motion?
Yes.
So apparently there'll be no motion because we're anticipating the grant. And if we don't get the grant, I assume it will in June?
In June, yes.
Yeah.
It'll be a day, hopefully.
Article 27. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds a sum not to exceed $26,000 to be expended by the town clerk to purchase 4 new ballot scanners, accessories, technical support, and implementation services, or take any action relative thereto. We've increased, Tighton has increased from 2 precincts because we went over the 8,000 residents. We have to have 3 precincts now, so it means more voting machines. Requires an upgrade of ballot scanners to accommodate added precincts and also to update to now 20-year-old equipment. Finance Committee, as well as the Board of Selectmen, recommends that this be transferred from free cash. Any comments, questions regarding that? Article 28. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available funds a sum of $2,500 to be expended by the town clerk and town treasurer to purchase 2 laptop with docking stations and 1 printer for use in shared counter space at the newly renovated offices at the town clerk and town treasurers in town hall, or take any action relative thereto. So if anybody's seen, we've been renovating the upstairs of the town hall, and it's going to be a center counter for the town clerk as well as the treasurer's office. They'll each have their own separate areas, but they need their own laptops to do their work, and that's why we're seeking this amount of money. Any questions about that? I don't know if you wish to speak on that, but it's a necessary need for the
I
town.
think very simply put, for logistics, it will allow us to serve everyone at the counter without going back to the office. You should be able to do everything just from that counter space. So, yeah, that's really the purpose. And thank you to Mr. Aguirre for all his work. It looks beautiful.
Yes, and the work of the highway department is doing all the work. They're doing a great job. If I didn't mention before, the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen recommend that it be transferred from free cash. Article 29, to see if the town will vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16G and a half, to allow the Tighton Rehoboth Regional School District to establish a stabilization fund for the future capital cost or take any other action relative thereto. What is it? Capital think buildings and equipment stabilization, think set aside or rainy day fund, thinks saving. Therefore, capital stabilization fund, which is similar to what the town has, is analogous to a savings account where funds are set aside for specific projects to insulate the members, towns, and the districts from large irregular expenses for buildings and equipment. The benefits to capital expenditures are irregular, can be significant in amount, consequently assessments for them are irregular and planning is difficult. In order to facilitate planning and avoid periodic large irregular outflows of funds, municipal and school districts can set aside funds for large future projects or unanticipated capital repairs. Setting aside funds over time allows the community to have them available in the future when emergency repairs for a large project is required without having any unexpected large requirements for funds. Funding source, proposed capital stabilization fund will be funded via school district E&D funds resulting from the district operating budget. Consequently, implementation of the capital stabilization fund. One, would further encourage the identification of operational efficiencies by the district, and two, would not result in an increased assessment to the member towns. Controls, in addition to the school committee oversight, which would govern the specific projects funded by the capital stabilization fund, there are legislative restrictions governing the use of capital stabilization funds in Massachusetts. I know that the Board of Selectmen had no recommendation on this, and I believe the Finance Committee, because it's not a money issue, did not address it. Did you have your hand up?
Yes, I do.
Selectman Hull.
I would like to point out something for the record. When Article 29 was discussed before the Board of Selectmen, no one from the DR School Committee spoke on this article. No one from the Superintendent's Office spoke on this article. When this was discussed at FinCom, no one from the DR School Committee spoke on behalf of this article. No one from the Superintendent's Office spoke about this article. This evening, an open meeting to the public. There is no one from the Tighton Rehoboth Regional School Committee or the Superintendent's Office advocating for their article. That's concerning. Thank you.
Any questions, any comments on
I
that?
actually have one.
Selectman
And anyone can answer it. My question is if approved, would this be utilized like a regular capital stabilization fund where the school committee would put an article on a town meeting warrant and then a 2/3 majority of that body would need to approve that article? I guess that's my question. I would assume it's the same.
It's not, we do not control, the town does not control the expenditures of the school.
Okay, so
The school committee voting on.
okay, they do it at their own meetings. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
So the point of clarity, just based on what you just said, is the town planning on making a motion on this, or are you expecting the school to make a motion on it?
I can't speak for the board, but I won't be making a motion about the rest of the board, but a school committee member could actually bring this up and make the motion. So.
Just general practice. I don't know that specific answer, but I was at a meeting with Mrs. Kuchar and Mrs. Terry, and it sounded like they would be at the town meeting. My expectation is when someone writes an article, that body or someone from that body should speak to that article. So I would assume that we would assume that the school committee would, present it. I'm sure Dr. Azar, he's usually there. I would assume he would be there.
Nancy
Mrs. Goulart.
631 Great Terrace. Having worked at the regional district for over 20 years and well aware of how capital expenses are managed, I would strongly urge the people of Tighton to vote against this if it's presented. The remark about funding wouldn't affect, would be coming out of E&D. The way money goes into E&D is they're allowed to keep 5% of the previous year's budget. So when the year closes, if there is 5%, it goes into their E&D. That law also says if there is an excess of 5%, it has to be used to reduce the assessments of the member towns. Well, if you're going to take 5% off the top to begin with, in my opinion, that's additional funding because whatever percentage would have been over the 5% isn't going to go back to reduce the assessments. The other problem I have is, quite frankly, if you read the papers, there are major concerns with financial controls up there, whether they're capital or operating. And the suit that's out there deals with supposedly, allegedly, whatever the term is you want to use, inappropriately spending money through an operating budget that are capital expenses. I don't know if that's true or not, I don't know all the details, but a suit's been filed. There's red flags everywhere. And personally, I think if the regional district needs capital money, they need to come to the towns, because that's what the regional agreement provides. I know of no part of the regional agreement, the old one, the new one, whatever's up there now, which I think is the one from 1980 something, when we went to a full K to 12, there's no provision as far as this kind of an account. The law may allow it, but come on, folks, major problem with control. In addition, there has been too much personnel turnover in the central office, and until things get under control, I don't think we should support this, period. And I intend to get up and say that at town meeting. I urge everyone, if this comes up, vote no.
Thank you.
Last question.
Dr. Z?
May I direct it to the town moderator?
Yes.
I don't know if you can answer it, and that's fine. Do we know if there was also a push or approval from the school committee for this to occur in Rehoboth as well? Or is this only for Dighton? On the Dighton side? And that, maybe you don't have to
I
answer.
think it would have to be.
Okay.
It doesn't have to make it a something that has to be.
Thank you.
Mrs. Goulart?
That was actually my question. I was actually gonna ask that. If we fail to pass it and they pass it, are we required to put it in place anyway?
I think both
It
towns.
would have to be both towns, and Rehoboth has now put their town meeting off to next May, I believe. They're not having a fall town meeting. So it would be ridiculous for us to vote on it just for that fact, I would think. If it were seriously considered in either member town, we should be talking about this together. Might be a good reason to have another selectmen's
Joint
meeting like
meeting.
we used to have. But their meeting's off to May.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
None.
Article 30, to see if the town will vote to amend the town of Dayton's general bylaws by adding the following article: designated safety zones. The town of Dayton, having adopted Chapter 90, Section 18B of the Massachusetts General Laws, hereby establishes a designated safety zone bylaw with the interest of improving public safety in said zone within the town. The operation of a motor vehicle in a designated safety zone, as established by Chapter 90, Section 18B of the Massachusetts General Laws, at a speed exceeding the speed limit established in said law, shall be a violation of Section 17 of Chapter 90 of said general laws. This is, so everybody knows, Pleasant Street area safety zone would include Pleasant Street, Water Street, Hot Street to County Street, Muddy Cove Lane, Cobb's Lane, Old Somerset Avenue to County Street, and Main Street from Water Street to County Street as displayed in Figure 1, Figure 2, and Figure 3. I'm not sure which figure that is. This proposed establishment of a safety zone bylaw proposal builds on multitude of town efforts to recently address speed issues in Pleasant Street area. We had residents from Pleasant Street come to us concerned about the people driving fast on Pleasant Street. If you know, from Main Street, it goes, I think it's 30 miles per hour, then it goes up to 40 miles per hour. Town residents approved opting into law allowing for establishment of safety zone, Massachusetts General Law, Section 18B, at June 2020 annual town meeting. Board of Selectmen held a public hearing on Pleasant Street safety zone on October 7, 2020. A separate analysis delivered to town in February 21, recommending establishment of town general bylaws for enforcement. The Board of Selectmen does not recommend this bylaw or this article. So does that mean we're not going to make a motion on this, I guess?
I wasn't planning on. May I make another comment?
Sure. Yes,
I think,
Dr. Z.
yeah, sure. I did have a resident ask me why the Board of Selectmen had changed its mind. And I think we had said at that meeting, since we were on the board when this originally came up to us, that there was an impression at the first two public hearings that everyone on Pleasant Street, for example, really wanted it. And then when we extended that conversation, it was clear from the broader public that not everyone wanted that, okay? And I understand that. But I think in light of how this has panned out, we may, as a Board of Selectmen, want to have a broader discussion on how to handle like speed issues. And I don't mean, I just mean when it comes up from the public. Like, we've had residents from Forest Street come and they have serious speed concerns. I think if safety zones are not gonna be an option, we have to have a broader conversation about, how we're gonna tackle that. So I just
Sure.
wanted to make that statement.
Right, and part of that conversation will be with the police department, because you can change the speed limits all you want, but without the enforcement, it really doesn't matter. And what we were considering was making the speed limit in these areas to 20 miles per hour, which is very difficult to drive. We'd probably get a lot of fines in town as a result of that. People get tickets, but is it realistic to ask the residents to go 20 miles per hour on these different streets? I'm not sure it is. So it looks like we will not be making that motion at the special town meeting. Article 31. To see if the town will vote to, in accordance with the Massachusetts General Laws, Section 139, Chapter 140, to amend the town of Dayton's dog license fees as follows. Female will be $15, spayed females will be $5, $15 for a male, and a neutered male is $5. License issued after April 1st. There'll be a late fee of $10 added for each dog, or take any other action relative thereto. Amend town of Dayton's dog licenses according to Massachusetts general law. I've just read that. Proposed change in the bylaw reflects the state statute while getting rid of steep increases in dog late fees. So, is there any question? And the Board of Selectmen recommends this. Is there any questions on Article 31? If not, we're going to go to Article 32. To see if the town will vote to amend the town of Dayton's zoning bylaws, Section 6 definition kennel residential by deleting in its entirety and replacing with the following. Kennel residential, a pack or collection of 4 or more dogs that are owned or kept under single ownership for personal use and enjoyment may be allowed in the residential or business district subject to the approval of the Board of Health and Animal Control Officer. This also includes a personal kennel as defined in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 140, Section 136A. Note, this section does not apply to properties with 3 dogs or less. Said residential kennels approved by the Board of Health and Animal Control Officer shall be inspected annually. The Board of Health shall promulgate regulations governing said process for approving and inspecting a residential kennel as so defined in accordance with applicable Massachusetts general laws. Appendix A, use of regulations schedule of the town of Dayton zoning bylaws shall be amended to reflect these changes. The proposed zoning bylaw removes the requirement for a special permit to be issued by the zoning board of appeals for a residential kennel or pack or collection of 4 or more dogs for personal use. So basically what this article is doing, because the way it is set up right now, if you want to get a kennel license, you have to go before the ZBA. It's going to cost you $750. You're on the ZBA. I was on the ZBA for 17 years. So you have to come before the ZBA, get their permission to have a kennel license, but it will cost you $750 at a minimum. You also have to notify the abutters, which costs, and it has to be advertised in the Town Gazette. That will also cost the person who's applying for the kennel license. So by doing this, by changing, getting rid of the old kennel bylaw and doing this, we eliminate that fee. There are probably a lot of people out there that do have more than 3 dogs, not coming in because they can't afford the $750, but by eliminating that, we think more people are going to come in. My concern about this, and I think you answered the question beforehand, but so that the public knows, if somebody's applying for a kennel license, the abutters will be notified, I assume, will be notified of that, because I would want to know if my neighbor.
I can speak to this if you like.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Pius.
As the chair mentioned, he was spot on with what the intent of this article is. These were drafted years ago, 2 years ago, actually. We kind of overlooked that fact of only one that could do the special permit hearing is the zoning board. So we decided this was written by the town administrator, town clerk, myself, and the animal control officer. Part of this will involve regulations that will require a hearing with the Board of Health and not the zoning board at no charge. The notice of abutters in the regulations will be by regular first-class mail, utilizing a certificate of mailing to prove that you mailed letters to your abutters in the process. That way there, that
per resident, that'll probably cost you about $1 to mail out a single piece of mail with that certificate of mailing versus whatever certified mail is now, I think about $7.50. So not only saving the cost of the hearing, you'll be saving on a butter notification. So I've almost completed the regulations with the help of the town clerk again and the animal control officer. We've been working on these. But the bottom line is this will be helpful to your pocketbook in the end.
Any questions on that article?
This article will require 2/3 vote majority.
It does.
Zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Yep. Article 33, to see if the town will vote to amend the general bylaws to add the following new article, Municipal Commission on Disability. So just so everybody knows, I'm on the liaison person for the Board of Selectmen for the Commission on Disability. So we've come up with some bylaws for the Commission on Disability. It's 3 pages. I'm not going to read all 3 pages unless you really want me to. Anybody want me to?
I don't think anyone does. No.
If not, I just point this out now. We'll also have our Commission on Disability chairperson speak. Tighton Commission on Disability is proposed to be established in the general bylaws similar to the Community Preservation Committee. New commissions on disability bylaws reflect the composition and existing commissions of disability practices, considered to be the best practice with the Massachusetts Office on Disability, making the town of Tighton eligible for additional grant funds. The Board of Selectmen recommends, as well as the Commission on Disability recommends. And Mr. Gale, our ADA coordinator, do you wish to speak on this?
There's not too much to say about this. I don't think else what you want to circle back. As the coordinator for the COD for the town, there isn't, as the chairperson said, there's not a lot to say about this. It's a requirement of law. The Commonwealth said we have to do this. When we have a commission on disability, every town is required to ultimately have a commission on disability. So the bylaws that we are using are a model that's provided by the Massachusetts Office of Disability with a few changes, small changes, simply to reflect the needs and the makeup of our town.
Is there any questions? Does anybody have any? Mr. Pacheco?
My question is this like a template from another commission on disability, or was this written by the commission?
This is a template with some small modifications provided by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, not from another commission on disability.
All right. So it's a template from the commission on disability.
I'm sorry?
Did I hear that it's a template from the commission?
It's a template from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Massachusetts Office of Disability.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, Dr. Z?
Mr. Gale. So I'm almost scared to ask you this. So that application that we sent in for the MOD grant, are we less likely to get that because we didn't have this on the books at the time?
And that one thing that's not another.
Okay.
If anything, we have a stronger opportunity to get it because one of the things that we've indicated in there is that we do have a commission on disability.
Thank you.
When we first did our original application for the KMA report, we did not have one. Now we do, so we are already more established.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. Any other questions, concerns?
This only will require a majority vote on the floor. Is the intent to read it in its entirety on town meeting floor, or are we just going to reference as defined in the warrant?
I'm hoping that we just reference it. Everybody will be given a copy of the articles, and they, at their own opportunity, they can read it. But I would prefer not to have to read it.
Is it
for clarity purposes during town floor? Please don't read it.
No,
Because then if you say one word wrong.
Correct.
As reading it, you'll have to reread it and or amend your article.
so
When
when
the
we
odds
have,
are I will say a wrong word, so.
no, it wasn't, he wasn't looking at you. So when we have these long bylaw adoption articles, I guess we'll call them, because we had a conservation one at the last town meeting that was pretty lengthy. Is there a way in the motion, it can actually be written in the motion thing that we hand out before the meeting, like as prepared, like we could already write that, so no one can, okay, perfect. Thank you, Mrs. Brady.
As defined in the warrant.
Any other questions or anything on this article?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you. Article 34, it's pilot agreement authorization for Brook Street Solar. there's a recommendation that we defer this to the annual town meeting. So we'll be making a motion. Ms. Goulart?
Mr. Chairman, the reason why that recommendation is going to be made is, first of all, there are major issues with the project relative to equipment. And one of the things that has to be in a pilot agreement is an inventory list. And until the planning board acts on issues that are before them, the pilot agreement can't be finalized. I am going to recommend we table and not defer. And the reason I'm going to do that, and I'm not going to explain it at the town meeting, the reason I'm going to recommend tabling is because this, there's going to be another article coming up for a different pilot agreement. If there is ever any question about how the people in Dighton feel, if you defer it, in effect, there's no record that the people took action other than to say, we're not voting on it. If you table it, it's a clear message to anyone that questions, what did the town do? They table it. So the proposal will be coming up at a future town meeting, but to just defer this based on the court case that the town won a few years ago, the fact that at that town meeting, the agreement that was taken to court that the town prevailed on, a lot of it was based on the fact that the town did act and the town tabled. So no one could say, well, the people never voted. Yes, they voted and they made it clear. So that's why I'm recommending we are going to table. I'm going to motion to table this one.
Are you making the motion as well, or are you gonna ask the board to make the motion?
I'll make the motion like I did, because I'm going to have to explain the one that I'm going to propose. All I'm saying is, if you remember last year, you asked me to explain it, and town council wasn't happy with that.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Are you going to make any, oh, I'm sorry. Are you going to make any remarks before you make the motion?
No.
Okay.
No, because that's what I did last time.
Okay.
And, Attorney Gay said,
Uh-oh, slap on the wrist. No.
You can comment on your original motion, you can't comment on it.
yeah,
Table is a non-discussion motion.
Correct.
Your initial, and that's why I asked if you're gonna do both. That's just, I would actually recommend someone else make the motion, and then you just make, and then you as the committee chair table it.
I can do that, as long as it's not deferred. Don't want it deferred, I want to vote.
You're gonna make the motion, and then there's gonna be a motion to table. And you can speak to your original motion, you can't speak to your table. Correct.
So do you prefer that somebody make the motion
Yes.
and maybe make a couple of
You
comments?
don't wanna do both, because then why'd you make the motion in the first place? Exactly.
Okay, yes, I get where you're going.
But the recommendation going in was it's going to be tabled. And without getting into history, when the minute is tabled and second is done, you gotta call it vote, all right? I understand why it was done. We also had two at that meeting. So, and obviously I got to explain one and ask the people to vote for it, and then the other one comes up and it's, so.
Mr. Moderator, motion to table, is it a 2/3 vote?
Motion to table is, I don't know how to call it.
It's a majority.
It's majority.
It's a majority?
It's majority. So we finish on Article 34?
Yes.
Article,
We have a question. Why would you not just not even bother to make a motion on the article?
So, because she made the point that she wants to demonstrate to the state for litigation purposes that we, the town, did act on it. So we listen to the
I wouldn't
motion,
get that out of that.
then we table it. So it's call to action. That makes sense.
And it also lets the developer know, we're not gonna act on this tonight. When we get everything worked out, it can come back before the voters. If we hadn't been dragged into court, I wouldn't raise the issue, but as I say, that was the savings grace when we ended up in court.
so just for clarification, we'll make the motion, we'll read the article, make the motion, second it. Mrs. Goulart will explain why we're not proceeding with this. She can't make a motion to table, but we can,
No, she can make a motion to table.
even if she discuss it.
Speak to the motion to table. Motion to table, it's non-discussion.
Yeah, but she can talk on the article itself, the warrant article first. I thought, okay.
I wasn't going to bring up history, but I can tell you, I did speak on a motion and moved right into a table. And it got tabled, and I was called on the carpet for that.
I'll get clarity from town council.
All right, going in, we'll find out
Yeah,
what we're
that's correct,
supposed to do.
So Article 35, to see if the town will vote in accordance with the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, Section 38H, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a payment in lieu of tax pilot agreement with ISM Solar Tighton 3 LLC of Arizona with a principal place of business at 4,900 Scottsdale Road, Suite 500, Scottsdale, Arizona, or it's assigned for a period of 20 years, and to approve said agreement under which ICM Solar Tighton 3 LLC of Arizona with a principal place of business is 4,900 Scottsdale Road, Suite 500, Scottsdale, Arizona, or it's assigned will pay the town a sum of money per year relative to a 58.7 acre parcel of land located at 2735 Elm Street, Tighton, Mass. 02715, map 23, lot 10. I was going to read one sentence, but this whole thing is a sentence. Related to the construction and operation of the photovoltaic solar facility with expected nameplate capacity of approximately 2.8 megawatts, alternating current AC, said tax agreement on file in the town office or take any action relative thereto. Mrs. Goulart, would you wish to speak on this, please?
Yes, this one I'm going to recommend that the town vote to approve. This one was tabled at the June town meeting because, again, we didn't have a complete inventory list and we hadn't worked out all of the details on this. Now, this, because this one has been around for a while, first of all, we have what the Stormwater Committee decided to identify as phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 was one of the first solar projects that got approved. And if you go up Elm Street and you know where Mr. Carr lives, you can see a gate and a riprap entrance into property. That's where phase 1 is. Phase 2 is located right behind it. So that access to 2, you have to drive through 1 on a gravel road. 1 has been approved. Now, phase 2 is the one that's going to be presented to you. The payment schedule has been reduced down to a 15-year payment because this thing has been operational for a while, so that hasn't come under the pilot agreement, all right? So starting with fiscal 2022, going for 15 years to 2036, the total amount of money that the town will receive is $610,400. This is a front-end loaded agreement. It starts out at $61,600 for fiscal 22 and fiscal 36, it's $9,800. So the maximum amount, or the highest amount of taxes will begin in 22, and it will gradually decrease each year until it's down to $9,800. To identify this one and to keep it separate from what we call phase 1, the agreements will state the exact location of the property, not only the street address, but the map and lot number, the total acres, and similar information that's been read tonight. So this is very similar to what you've already approved. And this company has met the requirements that are needed in order to exercise this. So if anyone has questions, other than the $610,000, we have the building commissioner here, we have the planning board chairman, and I can answer some questions too.
Are there any questions? Mr. Pacheco?
Sorry to ask a question, but you know you need specialized equipment if there's a fire at the solar facility, the batteries, and does any money go into that?
Okay,
Training?
number one, we don't have batteries in any of our solar facilities right now. Number two, in order for batteries to be considered, that has to go before the planning board. And even if it's passed there, the fire chief is the one who has to permit it.
Okay.
So, It requires, I'll say, extensive levels of approval if batteries are involved. I will tell you, this company, Phase 2, at one time, they approached us and said they were gonna add batteries to it, and we said, no, you wanna add batteries, that's gonna be Phase 3, that's a whole nother thing, so they haven't come back to us on that. But I will tell you that the town receives $5,000 on each pilot agreement to offset the cost of recording and legal fees and things like that. I tell you what the tax agreement is. There's a $50,000 decommissioning bond on this one. That could change depending upon what other types of solar farms sizes we may have. There are bonds required for maintenance of stormwater basins. And if they are not properly maintained, and the town has to maintain them, meaning the highway department, the cost for the town doing that would come out of that bond, and we would notify the owner, they've got to put money back into the bond to bring it up to the level of, for example, if it's $12,000 for a basin, they would have to put that back in. The decommissioning bond would be pulled if they in fact didn't, when the facility is done generating, if they're not gonna replace panels and all that other stuff, they have to return the land as close to its original condition. And if they don't do that, and we have to remove all that, that's what that bond money will be used for. As long as they maintain the basins and do what they have to do, and cover the expenses, they would get the bond back after. The $5,000 is not refundable, that's straight out paid to the town.
All right, I appreciate it. My thought was very general. I didn't know anything about how they work. My thought was if there was an emergency at one of the facilities, is there any money put aside for training, fire, police, and whoever would respond?
I can tell you that the fire chief has been very active on all of the solar projects. We've got a couple we've got approved, the ones that are in the works, not only from firefighting, but also fire prevention. The Brook Street project has a culvert that had to meet his specifications in order to get a fire truck into that property and over the little ditch. So depending upon what is needed, the stormwater committee brings in, I'll call it expert assistance, police chief, fire chief, anybody else we need that may have something to say about it. So any facility in Tighton, if there are going to be batteries, there's going to be a lot of regulations.
I'm not worried about the batteries, but thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we're going to go through Article 36, 37, 38, and 39. This is proposed acceptance of certain roadways as town roadways. They have to go before the planning board, the chairman of the planning board. Tim will speak on this. We're talking about Billy's Lane and Tommy's Way, Sunny's Way, Dighton Woods Road, and Dighton Woods Circle. Mr. Rhines, will you speak on this?
Members of the Board of Selectmen, thank you for having me this evening. Timothy Rhines, 316 Main Street, Chairman of the Planning Board. In regards to all of the articles that are written in regards to the acceptances of these certain roads in town, all of our engineering has been completed, all the necessary paperwork has also been done. Our peer review engineer came back, there were no punch list items on any of these proposed roads to be accepted in town, so we have all the documentation that the planning board is, they're required to receive.
And you recommend at the town?
And we recommend to accept all these roads in town.
Thank you. Any questions on this? If not, thank you, Mr. Rhines.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you, gentlemen.
So that concludes all the articles. Again, I want to thank our town administrator, Mike Mullen, for preparing this PowerPoint presentation.
Good.
I want to thank all the department heads that came here to speak on their articles, as well as the number of public residents that came in to ask some very good questions. And I see that we may have a question from one of our board members, Dr. Z.
Can, just one last thing, on the town meeting page,
Yes.
which our administrative assistant did not know about, we put all our town meeting information there. Can we also put this presentation?
Oh,
there as well?
we're gonna get it up on the
Okay,
website and get
awesome.
it out so everyone has access.
It's really helpful, thank you. It's very well done.
Any other questions, concerns, or anything? If not, we're going to be meeting again Wednesday, October 27th at 6 PM for a regular Board of Selectmen's meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second?
Well, you guys really jumped at that. There'll be no discussion on a motion to adjourn. I'll call for a vote. Selectman Hull?
Aye.
Selectman Zografis?
Aye.
And Campuchico is an aye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Hey, Mike,
Hey,
how you doing?
all right. A copy of Keegan's letter, can I get it?
It will be
So
in the,
my thing that.
it will be in the packet. I don't know if you have access. We post our packet on our
Oh, it'll
website.
be in the packet.
Be in the packet tomorrow when they
All right.
usually post the packet later in the day, so